While you're relocating to Virginia Beach and think maybe I should check out other cities like Newport News, or are you going to Newport News and might think, well, maybe I should check out Virginia Beach. So today we're comparing Virginia Beach and Newport News to find out, is Virginia Beach worth the money, or is Newport News a better value as opposed to living in Virginia Beach? And we're starting right now. Hey, my name is Sam Santalone and I'm a real estate agent in the Hampton Roads area of Virginia Beach all the way up to Newport News through Williamsburg, and I do videos every week about living and moving to Virginia Beach through the peninsula and Williamsburg. So if you have any questions or want to relocate into this area, let me know. I have my contact information in the description and you can reach out anytime and I'll do whatever I can to help you. And if you do like my videos, I would love it if you could hit that like button for the YouTube algorithms. It does spread the word out to other people like you who could like my videos too. People ask me, why are you comparing Virginia Beach and Newport News? They're such different cities. That's kind of the point. They are very different cities. A lot of people that are moving to this area don't realize what they might be missing if they try to live in one city or the other. So we're going to compare both and make some decisions as to which one makes the most sense. We're going to talk about what's there to do, where they are, what the traffic's going to be like commuting to one side or the other, and the real estate, of course, and the school districts. And at the end of the video, I'm going to talk about my conclusion, what I think makes the most sense and the best place to live between these two cities and why. You might be surprised at what my answer might be. So first of all, where are these two cities? So we're going to look on the map and compare these two. If you see on the map, you'll see the south side of Hampton Roads and the peninsula of Hampton Roads. Now, Virginia Beach is on the southeastern corner of the south side of Hampton Roads. Now, moving across the water right there up is what's called the peninsula. Now, Newport News is on the western side, that long sliver on the western side of the peninsula. So that leads me to, what is it like living in both Virginia Beach and Newport News? What's the vibe in these two cities? Well, first of all, Virginia Beach. It's got a lot of beach. I mean, we've seen that in a lot of my videos, talking about the beach. Lots of shopping scattered across the city. You'll notice the beach around the north side of Virginia Beach, along the east side as well. You'll get a total beach vibe, and lots of fishing, lots of boating, lots of good restaurants along the shore too. Lots of tourism as well. But once you get off of the shoreline, it's like a totally different city. Lots of suburbs, lots of shopping, strip malls, lots of commerce, businesses, roads all over the place. And then you've got also the southeastern section of Virginia Beach that's also straight up country. You've got what's called Pungo and Blackwater. This is where the place where if you want to build custom houses, lots of land, several acres, well and septic tanks, this is the place for that in the southeastern corner. So you get a mixture of vibes in Virginia Beach. But moving over to Newport News, what you feel is totally different depending on where you are in the city. First of all, there's a negative connotation to Newport News for being a really unsafe and just run down city. In a lot of cases, reputation is built based on some sort of truth or some sort of perceived reality. So in this case, the south and southwestern parts of Newport News are a bit run down. This is the section that has the most perception of the highest crime in the area. People will call the city bad news, and so they'll associate high crime with the entire city. But if you notice on the map on Trulia, you'll notice that the crime in the city is often very condensed in very specific places, but you notice that the rest of the city is not like that at all. And so this south and southwestern section does have a totally different vibe than the rest of the area. This area is more just older, lots of older houses, a lot of commercial buildings, and the Newport News shipbuilding is down here, so it just feels like a more of an industrial area and just more run down. But that changes as you move up into the central and northern parts of Newport News. So if you go up to the northern section of Newport News, you go to an area that's close to Fort Eustis, which is an army base, right on the very tip, the northern tip of Newport News. Around here, there's a lot of older, generally aged areas, some that were built in like the 80s and some in the 90s, but in general, there's not a lot of uniqueness in this area, just more functional housing with some condos and townhouses lined with older streets, with older strip malls, like older grocery stores, that kind of thing. So you don't really have a lot of uniqueness to this area, but for functional housing, especially close to Fort Eustis, this is a place that could have some good appeal. But going into the central section, there's more activity here, more shopping, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, more of the typical shopping centers like the Best Buys, the big box stores, lots of good restaurants right in the central section as well. And then going further west, this is where it gets a little bit more naturey, more trees, more older, bigger houses, more houses on the water, some amazing waterfront property, museums. So this whole section on this side has more of a character-laden nature feel to it that even the central or the northern section or the southern sections just don't have it at all or as much of. And in that western side, that's where you can get some of the most underrated and underappreciated and undervalued property in all of Hampton Roads, including Newport News and even Virginia Beach for that matter. So if I were to give a phrase that would describe Virginia Beach, I would call it multifaceted suburbia. That's the phrase I would use. But if you go to Newport News, my phrase would be underrated and misunderstood. So you can see the difference there. So let's shift from there to the jet noise in both cities. I've talked a ton about jet noise in Virginia Beach. If you've seen any of my videos about Virginia Beach, you'll hear me just harp on this jet noise. I don't like the jet noise. The Oceana Naval Air Station's on the eastern side of Virginia Beach. I just don't like all that noise. If you get real close to the base, it can rattle some windows randomly, but if you're a couple miles away and the planes fly overhead, you have to stop your conversation for like 20, 30 seconds, or sometimes it's just ear piercing and annoying. I don't like it. But some people don't care. Locals sometimes they just tune it out because they're so used to it, or they love the fact that they're close to the base. Some people love that, but I don't. So I'll drop the ACU's noise zone map for Virginia Beach so you can see the areas where the biggest noise issues are, because there are some spots that if you do want to move to Virginia Beach but you don't want noise, I would be very careful about some of these places. Now, shifting to Newport News. This area does not have nearly the same kind of noise that we're talking about in Virginia Beach near the Oceana Naval Air Station, but the one spot that people ask me a lot about is the Newport News Williamsburg Airport. That is in the kind of the central and eastern section of Newport News. This is an airport, and people ask me, okay, Sam, is the noise in this airport really bad? Is it like Oceana, for example? Well, first of all, no, it's not. It's not even close. In addition to that, most of the areas that you live in are not close to that airport. So you might hear some planes flying, but you don't really hear it as much, as loudly, or even sometimes at all, because again, where the airport is situated and the types of planes that are flying just really don't affect most of Newport News much at all. Now, things to do. There's a lot of things to do in Virginia Beach, right? Virginia Beach has so much going on. Of course, there's the beach. Virginia Beach has all kinds of beach, plenty of beachfront, lots of surfing, boating, fishing, outdoor activities. There's so many parks, over 200 publicly funded parks in Virginia Beach. There are hiking trails. The eastern section has False Cape State Park, Back Bay Wildlife Refuge. You've got historic landmarks. First Landing State Park is in the northeastern corner. That's where the settlers landed like 400 years ago, for goodness sakes. And the oceanfront itself, lots of tourism down on that eastern section. And the boardwalk along the oceanfront too. There's restaurants all over the place. Some of my favorite restaurants are in Virginia Beach. A couple of my recommendations: Waterman's, best orange crushes in the area, Carib Shack, Jerk Time Caribbean, a new restaurant I just found that is, oh my gosh, incredible. Another Caribbean place. Bay Local has good fish tacos. The Porch at Long Creek has good tuna. That's just several of so many restaurants. Great juice bars, all kinds of places in Virginia Beach. Some of the best restaurants you'll find anywhere in Hampton Roads are here. Then you've got Town Center with restaurants in there, shopping, performing arts centers in there. It's like the mini downtown. It's the downtown of Virginia Beach, but it's not really a downtown. Downtown Norfolk is the true downtown, but it's not bad. There's so much here. But the drawback, the biggest thing with things to do that's not in Virginia Beach, there's no major league for major sports team in Virginia Beach. Always has been this way, always super frustrating. I'm a sports fan, it's the worst. Now, shifting over to Newport News, it's a little bit different over here. There are actually lots of outdoor activities similar to Virginia Beach. You've got lots of parks. You've got several good parks. Newport News City Park is on the northern section. It has a campground, lots of playgrounds. It's a huge park, and it's also on a lake right next to it. It's got a couple of small little beaches, tiny beaches, not like you experience in Virginia Beach, but it's got a little bit. Let's not get carried away. There's not really much at the beaches. Got some good museums, Mariners Museum, the Virginia Living Museum, and it's set in a great spot. You can got lots more hiking, trails along the shore. It's a really cool, like the western side. I've mentioned this western side again. It is a really nice section. It has lots of quiet places to walk and run and bike. It's like a hidden gem in the city of Newport News. We've got Christopher Newport University, like an amazing looking college, but it has the Ferguson Center for Performing Arts that's right in front of there. I've been there for a lot of concerts. Virginia Beach has the town center. Well, Newport News has City Center. It's like the downtown of Newport News. It's got similar things. It's got some restaurants, some businesses. You know, it's similar to that downtown of Virginia Beach, but to me, it's just not not as to the same level as Virginia Beach, but it's nice for what it is. Across the street, you got Port Warwick, got more restaurants and shops on that side too. And Newport News has some good restaurants as well, but not nearly to the same level or the same amount as what you experience in Virginia Beach. One of which is the train station restaurant, which, you know, the food's fine, but the views are awesome. It's on the southwestern corner of Newport News overlooking the James River. Circa 1918 and Kismet Bistro are both in a little neighborhood called Hilton, which is a really quaint little town in the middle of Newport News. There's also a good juice bar in City Center I just tried for the first time called Juicing Life Bar and Cafe. Now also Newport News has some other options for things to do outside of the city. For example, if you go further north, you got Williamsburg, Busch Gardens, Jamestown, Yorktown, all the historical elements in that northern section that you're not too far away from in Newport News. Now let's talk about the school districts. This is where some of the biggest contrasts are. Now in Virginia Beach, these schools are some of the highest ranked in the state. Some of them are. Some are really in demand. You've got places like Salem, Kellam, First Colonial, Cox, Ocean Lakes, Lansdowne. What am I missing? Princess Anne. There are a ton of highly in-demand public schools in Virginia Beach. If you look at great schools and niche.com, you'll see what I'm talking about. They're ranked really high. Now again, the rankings don't tell the whole story, but it does give you an idea of how the Virginia Beach school systems are in this area. Not just high schools, but elementary schools and middle schools. But shifting over to Newport News, you can't say the same thing. If you look in the ranking system, you'll see that a lot of them are ranked a lot lower. And so this is one of the reasons why people are hesitant to live in Newport News, because of these school systems that aren't ranked as high. Now I will say that again, rankings don't tell the whole story, so I would do some research first to see if maybe there are some schools that you might like a lot, and if you do like them a lot, you can get a nice house and situation in Newport News for not as expensive as having to go into Virginia Beach. But that being said, there are some private schools, Denby Baptist, Peninsula Catholic, Hampton Christians in Hampton, as well as Hampton Roads Academy. There are some other private schools, several in the area that you can choose from if you don't want to do the public school route in Newport News. Now let's go over to the traffic. This is one of the most important things to discuss when talking about Virginia Beach and Newport News, because if you live in Virginia Beach and want to commute to Newport News or vice versa, this is going to be the biggest influencer in my opinion as to if you want to stay in the same city that you're working as opposed to commuting from one side of the water to the other. Virginia Beach, first of all, in the city itself, it's got a ton of roads, suburbia like crazy. If you look at the roads, like they wind around, it's like the opposite like of a grid system, like in a downtown, it's the opposite of that. So you got like roads that wind around, turn, lots of stoplights, lots of roads that have been expanded to accommodate more traffic. It is like a hodgepodge of traffic, and it can be frustrating driving from one side of the city to the other. If you're on Interstate 264 or Interstate 64 that runs through or around Virginia Beach, these areas can back up a lot during rush hour, especially during or right near the exit ramps. So going from one side of the city to the other, you're talking 20 to 25 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes or so, not even factoring in bigger backups. But now Newport News' traffic itself is not nearly to the level of Virginia Beach. So if you're going to be driving from one side of Newport News to the other, it's still going to be about 20 to 25, 30 minutes in some cases, but the reason is because it's such a long stretch of city from the top to the southern part. But if you're going to drive from across the city, it's only going to take you about 15-ish minutes or so. The biggest issues with traffic in this area is going to be close to both tunnels, the Monitor Merrimack Bridge Tunnel and the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, which are the two tunnels that connect from Newport News and Hampton over to Virginia Beach, Norfolk, and the areas near Suffolk. If you're in Newport News and you want to get to Virginia Beach, the primary direct way is to go to the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. And you look on the map, if you're not from here, you'll see this and you'll think, oh, I should just take this tunnel and go across, and it might be a great way for me to live in Newport News and work in Virginia Beach or vice versa, and it's not going to be that much more of a drive. Hold on. If you're in Newport News and you want to go across the tunnel or one of the two tunnels by way of interstate during rush hour times and often random times during the day, so there's not even really a time where it's obviously easy to do, crossing these tunnels is extremely difficult, extremely frustrating, and so random as to what you're going to get. You might be able to cross from Newport News and go over to Virginia Beach. It might only take you like 35-40 minutes to get from Newport News over to Virginia Beach if there's not much traffic. But if the traffic backs up a lot on the interstates going to the tunnels, this could make a 40-minute trip easily an hour plus, 2 hour 20 or more trip if the backups are long. And so if you look on Google Maps and you think, okay, well, I'll just plot my route out. Google Maps says it's about 41 minutes. Doesn't seem too bad. But just wait, test different times, test it randomly, because that time can easily be sometimes doubled in drive distance. It can make your life miserable if you don't like to be in the car for very long. Virginia Beach has more traffic in general. There's more annoying traffic in the city as opposed to Newport News. But going from one side to the other, both sides are as annoying as the other and can be really frustrating just to cross the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. And so be very careful. Make sure you know what you might be getting into. Now, the alternative to driving across the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel is the Monitor Merrimack Bridge Tunnel, which takes you from Newport News down towards Suffolk. This can be a sneaky, better way to go down as opposed to Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel because it is not as active of a tunnel compared to the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, the HRBT. So you could take this around, and it's a little bit of a longer drive all the way down through Chesapeake, all the way through into the southern part of Virginia Beach. But if you're convinced you want to commute from Newport News to Virginia Beach, I would consider this because it might be at worst an easier trip but the same time length, or it also could be quicker if the backups at the HRBT are really bad. Now let's compare the real estate in Virginia Beach and Newport News. This is the big differentiating factor and the reason why some people go to one or the other. Virginia Beach has a lot of different types of real estate in it. There are bungalows at the beach, there are big beach houses at the beach, there are suburbs everywhere. In the middle there's brick ranches, 2-story, 2,000 square feet, 4,000 square feet, 1,000 square feet, townhouses, condos, all kinds of different options in Virginia Beach. For the most part, a lot of the area is loaded with suburbs. So that primary like 1,800 square feet to like 2,800 square feet in that range, a lot of houses fit that criteria. But there are lots of different types of areas. So like the north side has more trees, more older neighborhoods, 60s style houses. Going further south, you'll get more new construction, and that's where the growth happened in the 80s and the 90s and in the 2000s. But there are still neighborhoods that are newer, that are scattered all over the place. So depending on where you want to be, you might find some element of a style house that you're looking for. Now the thing about the real estate though is in this city is that based on where you want to be, it drastically influences what it's going to cost to live there. So for example, if you're at the beach, houses at the beach on the ocean front for example can be easily over $1 million, way over that in some places, $4 or $5 million, these big massive houses on the water. But at the same time, if you go off the water, even a block or two, you're talking more like 800, 700, and 600 in some cases, even closer to 4 or 5, a few blocks off the beach in some cases. But most of the suburb section are anywhere from, you can get townhouses for $250, $300, upwards of single family houses anywhere from $250 all the way up to $800,000 in some cases. Most of the area ranges anywhere from like the $300,000 to the $450,000 to $500,000 price range. So that's illustrated by the median sales price in Virginia Beach in 2021 right now is $357,000 is illustrated on this graph. So payment for this price, generally speaking, is going to be around the $1,850 mark if you look at a mortgage calculator and today's general interest rates. So you can move that over to Newport News. How much different is a median sales price house in Virginia Beach in payment compared to what it's like in Newport News? Let's go to Newport News. Newport News has lots of different style houses as well, but not as many I'd say as Virginia Beach. 40s, 50s, and 60s. You've got neighborhoods like Hilton, which I think is amazing, a very unique neighborhood, but older houses. There are condos like in the 100 price range, 150, townhouses in that lower price range too. You've got houses in the $250,000, $300,000 price range. Houses that you might have to pay $500,000 or $600,000 for, you may only have to pay $425,000 or $450,000 for or less in Newport News. The south side area of Newport News is real cheap. You can get houses under $100,000 down there, but that area is totally different than the rest, like I mentioned before. But if you go to the west side, those houses near the water, you got waterfront that's like a $700,000, $800,000, $1 million plus. But you can get houses close to the water or on the water anywhere like under $1 million or just $600,000 close to the water, and that's unheard of in some parts of Virginia Beach. So again, I mentioned the hidden gem aspect of Newport News. That western side is amazing, but then there's also a larger section of Newport News that's kind of it's just not characterless, but just not very exciting. 80s style houses, 90s, 70s style. They're just in the neighborhoods. They're not super interesting to me. Not as many trees, not as much character in the neighborhood itself or the design of the houses. That's very functional. The houses are functional and they serve the great purpose of being affordable in a convenient area if you want to be in that area. However, sometimes the affordability doesn't, to me, always offset just the intrigue of the area, and I don't find that some of these areas in the central and northern parts of the Newport News are super interesting. But you can get a nice house, modest house, in that $250,000, $275,000 price range, as illustrated by the the median sales price in Newport News in 2021, which is $236,000. That's widely different. That's over $100,000 less compared to Virginia Beach in median sales price. So that means that Virginia Beach's median sales price is over 50% more than Newport News' median sales price for detached houses. Now, if you take that median sales price, $236, and put it in the mortgage calculator, it's going to be around, for current interest rates, around that $1,275 a month payment range. So that means it's almost $600 a month less for the median sales price house in Newport News compared to the median sales price in Virginia Beach. That is significant. So that is a tangible number you can use to say, hey, how much is it actually worth it for me to live in Virginia Beach or live in Newport News and commute to the other? It might be around that $600, $700, $800 or more a month difference. I'll say that at some point, even though Virginia Beach is wonderful, shifting over to Newport News to save that money can be very, very appealing, especially if you can get a great house in those areas that have more character, more intrigue of houses, good accessibility to shopping. It can be kind of tempting. So I think that the whole overarching decision about whether to live in Virginia Beach or Newport News comes down to a couple things. Number one, are you willing to pay more for what Virginia Beach has to offer compared to Newport News? And two, if you had to commute from one side of the water to the other, is it worth it to buy on the opposite side of where you work and experience the daily traffic that you hear so much complaining about going through those tunnels? Personally, I like Virginia Beach a lot better. I think it's worth it to live in Virginia Beach compared to Newport News, but I can totally see people wanting to live in Newport News and save that money. That tunnel is so annoying. Please make sure you know what you're getting into and drive so many people here crazy. So if you have any more questions about living in Virginia Beach or living in Newport News or the other cities in the Hampton Roads area, please let me know. I have my contact information in the description. I would love to help you relocate into this area, and I'll do whatever I can to help you. And I will see you on the next video.